Hello, Culture Matters podcast. Buckle up. Today is going to be fun. Today, we're going to find some honor. We're reading Christine Beckwith's book, Finding Honor, Your Journey to the Truth. We're on chapter 19, The Healer. Before I introduce, well, I already introduced. So here's the quote. I think belief and faith are powerful. And I now know today my belief in people is my superpower. I know it's a gift of extraordinary power. I've seen what it does to propel change. I have seen what it does to save people. Christine Beckwith, page 168. Thank you for coming back on the show, Christine, to talk about this amazing book. I showed it to someone the other day, a mentor, and they said, did this woman actually write this, or was this ghostwritten? Because it was so impressed by the writing, just looking at a couple pages. Could you just speak to that real quick? Just the power of
Yeah,
writing and how you've come to write such great books.
sure. Well, first of all, thank you for highlighting this book and spending so much time this past year, like diving into all the chapters. It's truly my honor to be able to help put this out into the world. Um, I had an English teacher when I was in grade school, uh, reach out to my parents. We were doing poetry at the time. They were introducing the types of poetry, which is part of the English dialect, fundamental education for American English, students. And they thought that my ability to write proper poetry at like 8 years old was really exceptional. And they asked permission to try to submit some of my poetry to the then Cricket magazine, which is kind of like the equivalent of Scholastics for children. It was a distributed magazine. Anyways, they did end up entering my poetry and it did end up getting published. And then over the next 2 years as a grade schooler, I would have several of my writings published. And then as I went on into high school, I entered into the New York bestsellers young authors competition. And at 16, I won the national competition. So I had, people that had honed my writing skills. I took extra English in high school. I would take two Englishes in junior and senior high school. I was a tutor for English. Um, I would go on to do the same in my secondary education. And I always wrote. I wrote for the school newspaper and on and on. So by the time I started to write as an adult, um, I did have a penchant for writing. I understood a lot of the components of writing. I have never had a ghostwriter. In fact, I'm pretty strict about the editing of my books, meaning I have an editor and two proofreaders. So people that usually publish books, and these are considered self-published because I have 2020 Vision Press. I had studied like a business person does, like the how much money the royalties are percentage wise. And I was stunned to read that authors don't, take the lion's share of the royalties or the profits, and that they go to the publishing companies and the printers. So I established an LLC called 2020 Vision Press, and I would publish only my first book under another name, and then all my books since then, and also helping a half a dozen other people. I have published under my own press name. I flipped the script on the percentage of royalties coming back to me and to the writers that I take no money from, but help publish their books. And so I just am very strict about the writing. If an editor is going to change what I'm trying to say, I will usually rebut and edit. However, my editors and my proofreaders are exceptional. And to say that I don't need the grammatical spelling edit would be wrong. But placement of chapters have been reorganized, but I have written everything. And it's all come from, a powerful emotional place
Has it
inside
helped
me.
you heal?
Yeah, totally. Like you and I have obviously dove into like the writing, reading, speaking mental wellness factor. I mean, why do children at 6 years old get put into it beyond younger than that? Why do we teach the alphabet when we begin? I mean, obviously we need to be able to read and write, but we don't talk about the mental wellness components of that. Once I adapted, I just naturally wrote things. My mind was manic as a child. It still is today as an adult. And writing is a powerful way of I use the analogy of swiping notifications out of your brain. Like if you have a busy brain and you need clarity and focus and you're struggling with ADD, and I really argue that ADD is an overactive mind. It isn't, it isn't an illness. It's managing the endless thoughts that are coming in and then staying, on point. So, writing for me has always been a healing component. I teach it today. Everybody that comes here receives a journal when they arrive. And we have fundamental classes on reading and writing, and it's a practice that we are doing every single day for people.
On page 168, you say, I see how lost people are, and I help them get back on the path. I know when they are lost beyond their words or actions. Sometimes their words and actions tell me their obvious story. Sometimes it is more elusive. Sometimes it's completely hidden, but I still see. Has writing helped you clarify and cut through and kind of push away the BS from the what's real at some level?
Yeah, I mean, it's funny that I named this chapter Healer. I had, over my career been called many things, but never that. And somewhere in our tutelage between you, coach, me, student, over a decade, um, you had kind of defined me as a healer. And I remember being so flattered. And also, it did feel right. That's a powerful word. It comes with a lot of, for me, insight into why I attract other people that need healing. And so I've been hurt in my lifetime. I have always said my heart is so big and I feel so deeply. I'm really not wired to be a business person like in my natural state. And I had to really adapt to become an expert business person because so many components of business require you to set your feelings aside. And so the greatest deterrent I've ever had is the depth of my feelings. And, being a person that would ultimately fall down um, in every imaginable way when I was going through emotional pain, it was a struggle for me to keep, myself on track. I learned to repurpose the pain, which is a chapter in this book, to kind of use the pain as a fuel to be able to set my pain on a shelf. Finding other people that are hurting was never hard for me because somehow my language, my ways attracts people. They know, I give off a persona of trust. I give off a persona of non-judgment. Sharing my stories has allowed me to connect to an audience that in our world may feel judged, and so on. And learning tactics to save myself from clinical depression and lift myself back up and get walking again, writing about it has, put the neon light on, for people to swim towards me with those types of pain. I am very exclusive in my consulting. I don't lend myself today to most of what my company offers. I have experts that are doing all of that. But I do lend myself to people that are going through grief. I lend myself to people that are trying to overcome past trauma. I'm not a doctor. However, I am living proof of someone that's, walked to the edge of, the pain and stood there, considering the way forward. And I am able to help people take the trauma that they have and talk about it for starters. Just get it out there to one person, me, in confidence, because that's the beginning of healing. A lot of times we stuff things. And so then kind of going from there, but to try to heal them it's not just a matter of talking, but it's a matter of reading, it's a matter of writing. It's a matter of getting into other community groups where they're talking about like type of problems and so on and so forth. I feel really good about the work that I've done in the last decade, and I do feel like I am a person that can help people heal.
What was it like coming alongside your sister?
Yeah, hard. We've talked about it over the last um over the journey of writing this book, that my sister was dying slowly during the writing of this book. And she, just for the audience, if they're coming in at this chapter, she had an attempted suicide and nearly died. She was found probably like 6 or 7 hours into a self-induced OD. She was not a drug user. I want to state that she was a person suffering from clinical depression, and I won't go into the reasons why, but it was related to her marriage, her long-term marriage. And the day she was found by my mother, she was not responding to phone calls. And anyways, my mom could not revive her, went over to her house, couldn't revive her, called 911. Um, and she was clinging to life at that point. And the damages she did, they had to transport her. She was in such severe condition, they had to transport her to a special hospital farther away than the local hospital. They had to Narcan her 6 times to revive her. And the damages that she had done to her organs, they gave her 90 days to live. She would end up living almost 5 years. And it was a roller coaster. And so, she was really bad. We were expecting her to die any minute the first year. And then she started getting better, and she got all the way to the point where she didn't require oxygen. Um, and she had adjusted her diet. She had quit smoking. She had done some things that were really helpful for her, and she rebounded. And we all, had hope there. And then the decline started again, and that decline would be ultimately what would take her down. During the writing of the book, I would move home after being away for 37 years, buy a home about 10 minutes from her hospital where she was now living with nursing care. And it allowed me to like go there, sit with her, on a regular basis, go get her, take her for drives, that sort of thing. She died 3 days after I finished writing this book. She did the things in this book. In my last chapter, we'll talk about, her seeking her own salvation and finding a place of peace. And I got to witness with my own eyes the actual power of somebody that worked to the bitter end, even knowing the end was coming, on healing themselves emotionally. Every facet of this book, forgiving your killer. She held tremendous grudges in her life against people. She was always, she was 2 years older than me. She had disabilities when she was born. And so I know there's people that are going to listen to this. If you've ever had, and I know there's millions of people out there, but a sibling that has physical disabilities. She was born deaf, and she had a severe muscle atrophy condition. And so she just was ahead of me in school, but she was so meek that I found myself her defender, like as a young girl. We shared a bedroom for 18 years. And I mean, I have the fondest, funniest memories of us, being in that space. And I'm glad now that as a girl, I hated sharing a room. Today, with her gone, I'm grateful to have had slept underneath the same, place. It made us close. Um, and so, yeah, it's to watch her. I talked about forgiving your killers and the peace that it could bring her. And it wasn't about them. It wasn't about giving them back power. It was about giving herself back power. I talked about the things on their surface that sometimes, we hold on to that are killing us. And I can tell you her transformation was stunning. And people, including my own family, have talked a lot about how she was in her final 30 days. She was at peace. She literally, you know, was the kindest version of herself. She was jovial. On the day that she died, she woke up and called me and literally told me how good she felt that day. And I know, you know, physically there's a whole thing that the doctors say happen when a person's getting ready to die, where they have this euphoric state come over her or them. And I'm glad that I did the work. When she died, I found messages in her phone to people that I never expected her to send, you know, loving messages to. Um, it was beautiful,
Wow.
you know, and so all of that was extremely difficult. Her death date is coming on Tuesday, actually, and she just had a birthday 2 weeks ago. And so we're kind of in the intersection. There was 14 days between her birthday and her death 2 years ago. I was on a vacation when her birthday was happening and she was super sick. And I knew we were close and I felt like I was losing time. And I actually left Long Beach Island where I was vacationing 4 days into a 7-day trip um, to come home because I was struggling with not being with her. And I got resistance from my own immediate family for leaving the vacation because they were like, she'll be fine, she'll be fine. And I just said, no, you know, I don't know. And so we left, all of us left. Obviously, when she died, there was, you know, words spoken about my intuition about where we were and how things were, you know.
Wow.
I would end by saying, ultimately, you have to define what healing means. This isn't about physical healing. I'm not some person that can lay my hand on a person's head and cure their physical ailments. However, I am a person, I think, that can get somebody to the highest and best self-love place. I think healing is internal. I think it's a mental state of mind. Um, I feel healed by the work I've done that I've shared in this book from end to end. I operate differently because of the work I've put into myself, how I react to people, how I react to business people in business, my family, the cadence of how I speak and react, how well I listen to others. Um, when I choose to be tenacious versus, you know, empathetic. I'm more regulated today. What I allow to hurt me, protective boundaries that I'm able to see from toxic people that I need to do when I'm getting used and taken advantage of. All of my things that hurt me in my life, I now am walking a path where I have a Teflon, you know, protection because of the work that I put in.
You know, it's yeah, on it's really profound to me that in this chapter you talk about the end. You know, you said I know my greatest job will be to go put on the shoes of pain and face her, to take her if she is able for a car ride so the wind and sun can blow in her hair and shine on her face. My job is to sit with her, give her belief in her fight, and help her find value and purpose in this life before it ends. I know my job in this instance is where I can't save her. I'm not magical, but in healing her internally, will I prepare her for what's coming, the ultimate end? I believe I will. In helping her to heal, will I help my parents, my siblings, her child, even myself? I think so.
Yeah.
Just want to say, very profound that you're
You know,
thinking
what's funny
about that way
is
before.
when I finished that book, when I finished that writing, I ultimately sat in disbelief. I was the person who found her. Um, it was a Saturday, September 10th, 2022, and I had gone to the spa that day. And after receiving her message that I just shared saying that, you know, she felt good that day, I felt okay being disconnected for what would be 4 or 5 hours. The last text I received, I actually viewed between treatments at the spa, and she was just asking me if I was bringing her to the doctor's on Tuesday. Anyways, when I got out of the spa, I replied to her. I would never get a response back from that reply. Sometime around dinner time, my parents had come over to visit and we had decided to order takeout. And I went with my mom to go pick it up, and we ran into a high school friend of mine and we were chit-chatting, and we even were talking about Tammy and being asked about it. And then when we got back here and began to eat, just I had this just uneasy feeling that she hadn't responded for a few hours. I knew she napped in the afternoon, so there was a little bit of like belief that that was the case. And then I just stood up and said, I'm going over there. And my mom and dad had finished eating, so they said, well, we'll follow you and then we'll go home. And so I went in my car, and as I was driving, my panic set in because I started to call her, and I just kept dialing and dialing, and I even had a weird thing happen where I have face recognition on my phone. And for whatever reason, my phone was in the cradle and I had been calling without her answering, but it started to ring on my end and it had her name there. And so I thought she was calling me back. So I had this wave of relief come over me. And in reality, my face recognition, because the phone was in front of me, had opened up the phone and somehow dialed her another time without me touching it. And the ringing I heard was an outbound call, not an inbound call. Nonetheless, got to the home and we couldn't find her at first. She wasn't in the living room, wasn't in the bedroom. She doesn't have a big apartment. And then when we circled back the second time, I saw her feet sticking out between two pieces of furniture on the floor. I knew. And my father and I would get on the floor, turn her over, and start to administer CPR with 911's assistance. And that would go on until the EMTs arrived. And it was traumatic. It was really traumatic. Um, I'm going to tell you that I knew in that moment, and I've said this before, that I was going to need to figure out how to save myself and be strong for my family, her son, and all the people that you just read about. But when I got home that night, after everything was all said and done, and the EMTs came and pronounced her dead and took her away, and the reality of things sunk in, I was in disbelief, and I stayed there for many days. And I kept articulating, I didn't know she was going to die. I didn't know she was going to die. And it took my partner, Corey Parker, to kind of square me off and say, Christine, you did know. You knew. Um, you walked the walk with her. You were picking up nighttime phone calls from her. She was rushed to the hospital 6 times in the last 30 days. You kept saying to us, like, this is it. This is it. But somewhere in me, I had this enormous regret because I never like gushed my feelings to her. I never said all the things I wanted to say to her. And I had anyone that loses somebody close, you have like enormous regret. I don't care how, great you are. And Corey was like, Christine, you could not have done more for Tammy. Like you moved here, you moved home 3 years early of your plan and you've given your life to her and she loved you to death. She had said the things she wanted to say to me. She was putting things in order and she was giving me and asking of me. She asked me to take care of her son. She asked me things in the final days. And I think the reason that I didn't think that I had said that she was dying was because I hadn't had a chance to say my goodbyes. I now realize I wasn't waiting. I didn't, I was being strong for her. I knew if I said goodbye to her, and this may be selfish, that it would maybe make her let go. I didn't know, I know when people reach their final to-do list and when they're dying and they're at peace, like sometimes people cling on in the hospital till someone arrives from far away and they get to see them and then they're at peace. And I knew she was close because of the state that she was in and everything that she was doing. I just think that I couldn't say all the things I needed to say because she would know I was saying goodbye. And somehow in me, I was still holding on to hope that she would fight if I didn't say that. And so I've had to live with the idea that she obviously knew through my actions my entire life how much I loved her. Um, it's still hard. I don't grieve every day anymore, but one of the things I came to terms with was, and this is great for this chapter, is the tremendous amount of purpose that she gave me in life. She was a burden at times in my lifetime. I don't mind saying that. Her life required a lot of support my whole life. And I realized I've been doing it since I was a little girl, kind of being her protector. And, we were a 2 or 3 time a day phone call. And so I wish and I hope she knows the amount of purpose she gave me. Like that was a gift. And she was my best friend. Like I think she always thought that she leaned on me. And the truth was I would tell her my woes just as much as she told me we would bitch about my mom, together. And there's been so many times since that I wanted to pick up the phone and say, "Oh my God, you wouldn't believe what happened today," type of thing. So yeah, I mean, in ending, because I know that's all tremendously graphic and it's, very private, but at the same time, it's this chapter, what you just read, is living proof that I did know she was dying because I wrote about it before she died. And there's nothing more factual or proving than that. I knew. I knew it was close. And, it's just funny how things kind of make you feel. So she was the ultimate vetter of this book. Um, and I'm not exaggerating when I tell you what an incredible thing to witness, to see someone reach their peaceful place of salvation. She wasn't usually faithful and she asked God for forgiveness. Um, really powerful work, So I'm going to say this book is deep, psychologically speaking, but it is extremely uplifting as well. I know a lot of the topics that we talk about are very emotional. I don't think you can psychologically rewire yourself or try to refocus yourself in the right direction until you're willing to sit with the darkness. Like you've got to go there to get out of there. You've got to see it, and wrestle it, to go forward. Compartmentalizing is a tactic, but stuffing is not the way forward. So I hope this book is, going to continue to do tremendous work. Um, this is a book about getting honest with yourself. And the initial year that it launched, when my friends all took it to read or bought it, I watched who finished it in 5 hours and who set it down and couldn't finish it, because people that are ready devour it, and people who aren't ready have a hard time facing it. And so without them giving me a review, I already kind of know where they are. Some people aren't ready to be saved. Some people aren't ready to be healed. Some people aren't ready to be born again. And again, this isn't about born again, religion. This is about just rebirthing yourself and the way that you live in a new way.
I challenge our listeners to pick up the book, Finding Honor, Your Journey to the Truth. Read chapter 19, The Healer. Christine, thank you for today.
Thank you.
An honor to go through this with you. And we will see you all on the next time of the Culture Matters podcast. Please review Finding Honor, and we will see you then.